G'day, ZiggyD here, and it's that time of the week again. It's time for my Build of the Week poll, so you guys can decide the build that I'll be leveling and eventually providing a build guide on. Now, I haven't got the previous build guide out for the two-handed sword-wielding shadow yet, but I think I'll probably do that each week, where I hold the poll a little bit in advance so you guys have some time to vote before I actually give you the complete guide. So that should be up sometime over the next 24 hours, depending on how it goes. Trying not to rush those too much. I'm doing things a little bit differently this week. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from you guys on the previous polls, how I was doing the polls, and also how I was doing the actual builds that I was planning out, and whether I was creating them or whether I was using other people's builds and things like that. So doing things a little bit differently. Firstly, I'm going to be going for builds that I create from now on. A lot of people requested and said that they prefer that. They see me either maybe I struggle a little bit more because I'm not using an already well-tested build, but I think there's a lot more to be learned from that, so I'm pretty happy to be doing that. The other thing is that I'm going to reduce the choices down to 2 for this week to test that out. Each week so far, there's been 2 really popular options and 1 third option which isn't very popular. I guess that sort of always happens with a poll with 3 options in it. But I felt like the people who were voting for the third least popular option, their votes were kind of wasted since they weren't helping decide the other one. And last week we actually had a dead tie for the 2 most popular options, and I had to basically flip a coin on that. But I'd rather have those other people who voted for the third choice vote for one of these 2 choices and have a better majority idea of what people want to see. So 2 options for you this week. It's been very hot here in Australia, so I'm feeling a bit of an ice theme to cool things off. So I feel like basically freezing and shattering things. Alright, so let's just jump straight into it. What you guys are looking at right now is my super dodgy Photoshop CS5, I guess, mind map of the builds that I want to do. I've planned out the trees roughly a little bit, like you guys can probably see here. That's a super rough plan for these builds. I will definitely be redesigning it, but it gave me an idea to work off. But this is what you guys get to look at, is this idea planning behind each of the builds. Let's jump straight into it. The first build option is an Ice Shot Ranger. And I'm thinking of going pure evasion. I've had a lot of people asking me to go like acrobatics, phase acrobatics, arrow dodging and things like that, asking me to do that with my shadow, and I didn't think that was a very good route to take for a melee build, but I'm pretty happy to do it for a ranger, so I think that'd be pretty cool. Now, single target ability would be Ice Shot, probably with faster attacks, crit chance, weapon elemental damage, cold penetration, etc. Focusing on damage and freezing, so I can get high damaging single target freezes off while still having a little bit of AoE from the Ice Shot ability. Overall, I think Ice Shot's really cool, feeling, sounding, looking ability. I haven't used it too much, but the times I have used it, it was really fun to use, so I'm keen to have that in as one of the options. And for the AoE skill, I'll use a separate Ice Shot gem, and I'll link it to lesser multiple projectiles. And I was thinking possibly Chain, but maybe also Pierce. There's some good Pierce passive nodes on the skill tree there, and if I combine that with a Pierce skill gem, I'll have like 85% chance to pierce. And the way that I am 99% sure that Ice Shot works was the same way that Lightning Arrow worked, was that even if the projectile pierced, it would still proc the ability. So that means that the Ice Shot will hit and still do its shadow and cone AoE damage, but the projectile will keep going as well. So I think that'd be interesting to test around with, but I could end up going with Chain or Fork or something like that. Fork might also be good for spreading a lot of AoE and things like that, but that'll be one to test out. So single target Ice Shot, AoE Ice Shot, full on Ice Shot mode. So from a defensive standpoint, we'll be going pure evasion, so acrobatics, phase acrobatics, arrow dodging, all that good stuff, and a lot of obviously evasion gear and evasion passive nodes to support that, because you need to have a lot of evasion to make it work properly. And the other important defensive point of this is that my enemies will be frozen most of the time, hopefully, if I can do this right, get enough crit chance and enough chance to freeze. And if they're not frozen, they're slowed, so it makes them a lot easier to kite. It's kind of cool. I like ice as an elemental choice for that reason, because it is, you're also converting your damage dealing into a defensive thing as well. So that's pretty interesting stuff there. Now let's talk about the cold crit witch option. Now I haven't decided whether I'd be going Eldritch Battery or Chaos Inoculation. Eldritch Battery is obviously going to give me a lot more mana and a lot more auras to play around with and can make for a pretty diverse character. But a lot of you guys also are asking for a CI build, and I haven't made a CI build since closed beta, where it's been nerfed since then, but I know it's still a very strong defensive option. And if I want a really tanky sort of witch, it's possible to do through CI. However, it might not be necessary with the skill choices I've got here. So the main skill that I would be casting myself is freezing pulse. So I'd be using that with less than multiple projectile, and I didn't write it down there, but also projectile speed, because what projectile speed does with freezing pulse is pretty interesting actually. Makes the freezing pulse go further, and the way freezing pulse works is that the closer ranged enemies that are closer to the start point of the freezing pulse take more damage. So with increased range on the freezing pulse, that area of extra damage is also increased, so you can hit things more easily with that. And less than multiple projectiles works pretty interesting with that, because you can change the way that the spell fans out. You can either have it fan out and hit lots of things, or you can have them all stack up on top of each other and hit the same enemy multiple times, which you can't often do with less than multiple projectiles, so that's pretty interesting. And the additional, I guess, supplementary damage dealing and freezing skill would be Ice Spear with the Spell Totem support gem and lesser multiple projectiles. Sorry. So I've seen this in action, and the totems are pretty beastly, freezing mobs like crazy. Ice Spear has a high chance to crit once it reaches its second form. So with clever, careful totem placement, you can have that happen a lot and have a lot of mobs frozen. I think both builds really have a lot of potential for freezing mobs, and that's pretty cool. That's kind of what I want to go for this week. Yep, so Eldritch Battery or Chaos Inoculation. Maybe you guys can provide some insight of what you prefer to see, or it can be something that I work out after playing the build for the first 20 levels or something like that, and I can let you guys know what decision I make in regards to that and how I make that decision in the build recaps as I go through. And then stays alive by freezing and hiding behind the totem. So I'd obviously be getting some health and things like that if I go for Eldritch Battery, but if I go for CI, I'd be stacking a lot of Energy Shield. So those are the two options I'm going for this week. I don't think I really need to show you guys over this rough skill tree, but it's pretty basic stuff at the moment, just planning out some of the nodes that I have access to and the directions I can take, but that'll be something I'll definitely plan out a lot more once the actual build's chosen. So, let me know. I'll put a poll in the description below and you guys can select which build you'd prefer to see. I hope this works out a lot better. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching. Tigers.